What's up, everyone? Welcome to Power Play with CJ. Today we're going to talk about with Rick Nash requesting a trade and what that means for the Jackets going forward. Obviously, they didn't move him yesterday on deadline day, but I think that organization failed Rick Nash. I think, he was drafted first overall back in 2002, so 10 years ago. They bring him in, makes the team at 18, has 39 points, and then the next year has 41 goals and ties for the Rocket Rashad Trophy with Jerome McGinley and Ilya Kovalchuk. Then after the lockout, consistent threat for between 27 and 40 goals. That's the peaks and valleys. And, obviously one of the elite players in the game, two-time Canadian Olympian. And, just a guy, power forward that can hit. He's 6'4", 220, got an all-world skill set, but never had complementary players around him. You look at in the NHL, Pittsburgh drafts Crosby first overall. They already have Malkin in the system. They draft Stahl. Then they go out and they sign some good free. They have Fleury in the system too. Obviously, Pittsburgh had a ton of lottery picks, so that really, gave them more to build around Crosby with. But they signed Gonshaw. They signed Mark Recchi. They make the trade for Hossa on the Cup run. That doesn't work out. No worries. They get Kunitz, and then they get Billy Guerin the next year. And both those guys went on to be big parts of the Penguins winning the Stanley Cup. So, that's how you do it. You look at basketball, the Oklahoma City Thunder have Kevin Durant. They get Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, make a trade to Kendrick Perkins, and draft James Harden, guys like that, to build around him. The Lakers, they had Kobe and Shaq for all those years, and then they had some lean years. Kobe wants out. They make the big deal. They get Gasol. Bynum develops. And then, lo and behold, they win 2 more championships. You got to do that with your superstar. In 2008, when Nash had 38 goals, he had a career-high 95 penalty minutes to him by day. The Tampa Bay Lightning made Brad Richards available. He ended up going to Dallas. The Jackets were in the bidding, but they didn't want to overpay for Brad Richards. Had they been able to get Richards' playmaking and Nash's goal scoring ability on the same line, the Rangers are salivating over. Had they gotten Nash, well, would have been even better because playing a wide open system in Columbus, it would have been great. They go out this year. They finally make a gamble. They overpay for James Wisniewski, and they make a deal for Jeff Carter. James Wisniewski really isn't number one defenseman. I'm sorry. He's not a top 25 defenseman in the National Hockey League. He's just not. Then they get Jeff Carter, who is a top 10 or 15 center, but his skill set isn't comparable to Nash. They're both shooters. They don't complement one another. He's not a playmaker like Brad Richards. And, his attitude sucked. He didn't want to be there. He made that known from the start. And then, the team struggles early on, and now they're in the doldrums completely, and they're going to be selecting Yakupov, number 1 overall, and saying goodbye to Rick Nash. I mean, you look at Nash. How many times have they had to rebuild that organization? They made the playoffs once when Mason had a great year, and Nash had, that was his second 40-goal season in 2009. They got swept by Detroit, but they still made the playoffs. That's a step in the right direction. But, you got to give him the guys to make him better. They never had a true power play quarterback at all on the back end. I'm looking over some of the years now. I mean, it's just too bad. You really feel bad for Rick Nash because he signed an extension to stay in Columbus. He, non-traditional hockey market, not like Ottawa or Toronto, London, Jesus. They have an NHL. Well, the London Knights, where Rick Nash played junior hockey, could pass as a NHL team for the amount of talent they produced. But I'm just looking at this team. Vinny Prospal is the number 2 scorer on that team. Vinny Prospal is 36 years old, 37 years old. He's not anything to write home about. I mean, he had some good years with Tampa, with LeCavier and St. Louis. But, I mean, that's it. You look at some of these teams, and you're like, R.J. Umberg is a good player, but is he a number 2 guy to Nash? No. And you keep him with the NBA, we talked about earlier. LeBron James in Cleveland. They don't surround him with the players to make him better. They don't go out. They pussy down and get Amari Stoudemire. They give him Shaq, who at that point in time was way past his prime, and Mo Williams, who ain't a number 2 option on a championship contention team. Christian Huselius has been hurt this year. Number 2 guy. Jakub Voracek turned into a pretty good player, but obviously he's in Philly now. was part of that great Jeff Goddard deal. But I'm just looking at these teams like no true power play quarterbacks or defensemen. They overpaid for Mike Commodore, for God's sakes. They overpaid for Rafi Torres at one point. Jesus, I'm looking at how bad some of these teams are. They had Fedor Tutin, who's a pretty good player, but he's not too bad. But even then, I mean, his career high points is 34. I mean, that's good, but it's not. Oh my God, we need this guy to build around. They just flat out failed Rick Nash, and I really feel bad for him because had he had the proper pieces around him, they could have been a contender in Columbus. And they're going to trade him on the draft day. They're going to select Nail Yakupov first overall, and he's going to go through the same shit Rick Nash went through. And the franchise is going to continue to suck. I don't blame Rick Nash for requesting a trade. He showed Columbus his loyalty. He stayed with that team. He signed an extension. He wants to be there, but they won't meet him halfway and give him the players to make him and the team better. And it's a crying shame. It's awful what they're doing to him. And hopefully he goes to a market like the Rangers or Toronto that appreciates him. And I'm not knocking the fans of Columbus in any way. They appreciate what Rick Nash has done for that organization. I know for a fact many of them, from what I've seen on the message boards, are with him. How can you waste a prime of your career playing in a market where you're not surrounded by similarly talented players? It's just wrong. And hopefully a team like Ottawa or Toronto or the Rangers puts players around him to make him better. But see how it shakes out. That's it for this episode of the Power Play with CJ on how the Columbus Blue Jackets failed Rick Nash and what it means going forward. Later, guys.